Hello, my name's Mr. Bates, and we're going to be looking at a revision activity. And today's revision activity is called Am I Thinking? What is Am I Thinking? Well, it's a kind of booster activity that you can use with any of your other revision activities. Okay, so whenever you're revising, have a think about including this activity as well. So why would we be doing this? Well, you're going to be spending a lot of time you're studying, both at home and in the classroom. You're going to be spending a lot of your time studying. What you need to realize is just because you're studying, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're learning. Okay, you could be sitting there doing work, but not really thinking about it. If you want to be learning, making good use of your time studying, then you do need to be thinking. And that's what this activity is about, checking that you're thinking. Okay, so how can we boost this thinking? Well, the first thing to do is just ask yourself, when you're studying, am I actually thinking about this thing? All right, the way you can check to see if you're thinking is ask yourself, can I explain what I just heard, what I just read? Can I identify those things that didn't make sense? You know, certain things will pop out and while somebody's talking, won't make sense at all. Can you remember those bits? Also, whilst you're thinking, whilst you're listening, some questions might come into your head. How does this connect with that? That sort of thing. If you have any questions or any comments to make about what you've just listened to, well, that means you're thinking. Have a look at this video. This is Dr. Justin Sung. He's a learning coach.
So passive learning is when we're not really thinking very deeply about a topic. We're not using our cognitive resources too effectively. We're just not being very active about our learning. The way that passive learning will feel is that we may feel sleepy, drowsy. We may be feeling disengaged and not interested in what we're learning about. And if you do too much passive learning, you're not going to be activating efficient encoding processes, and therefore you're not going to have good memory of it. You're going to forget very quickly. You're not going to know it very deeply. On the other hand, active learning, we're increasing the amount of effort that we're putting in so that we can store it into our memory and therefore activate and utilize information at a higher level of mastery. The key step is you have to have awareness of when you're entering into that passive learning state. So figure out what those cues are. For most people, it is that disengagement, feeling that this is irrelevant, the glazing over, and then the drowsiness, the feeling like you're sort of falling asleep as you read or as you listen. These are the signs of passive learning.
All right. So did you ask yourself, am I thinking about this? Or was you just sort of passively watching it? You might have remembered a lot of it. You might not. You know, one way of finding out if you are actually thinking about that is, could you explain that in some way, that video? To find out if you was actually thinking, ask yourself these sorts of questions. Right? Did you come up with any questions? Have you got a comment about it? All of those are good indicators that you were thinking about it. If you're thinking about it, you're learning, you're connecting it to what you already know. And that's going to be good learning. Actually, that's great if you did think about it. But I wouldn't be that surprised if you weren't really thinking about that, if you were sat there a bit switched off, because you didn't really choose to watch Dr. Justin Sung's video there. And so you might have been a little bit passive about that and not really actively engaged in your learning. It's very rare that you can be thinking about absolutely everything all the time. But the important thing you to remember is that when you do want to learn something, if you do want to spend that time effectively in the classroom, at home, revising, the only way you're going to do that effectively is to be checking that you're thinking about it. So how do we boost our thinking? Well, the first boost is, like I said, just thinking about thinking, right? Just double checking, am I thinking? Also, just by asking more questions. Questions are great. If questions come into your mind, well, ask them of yourself or ask them of the teacher or ask them of somebody else, okay? Use those questions. They're really good. The good thing is don't just ask a question, but try and get an answer. You know, be determined to get that answer from somewhere. It can be anywhere. So when should you be doing the thinking activity? Well, I'd like you to get into the habit of doing it as much as possible. Right? So when you're revising, perfect time to be asking yourself, am I thinking? In lessons, another great opportunity to be asking yourself, am I thinking? And homeworks as well. If you're going to be spending time working, well, you might as well make that time as effective as possible. Okay, so now it's your turn to have a go. What you need to be doing is you need to be choosing yourself a topic to revise. Can be any topic. Decide which revision activity you're going to use to revise that topic. And again, can be any activity. But the main thing is that you ask yourself, am I thinking? So what we talked about here today is a boost to activity, can be done at any time. I hope you found that useful. Thank you for listening.